I was on the edge of being a teenager, 12 or 13 years old, when I was left alone for the first time. My family lived on a ranch about 25 minutes from town, with our only neighbors being my grandparents, who are very old. I was sitting in my room watching YouTube when I heard a loud creak on one of the steps outside my window. I paused my video and stared at my window, closed by blinds, knowing that all I had to do was open them up and see what it was, but I ignored it. About a minute later, I heard 3 more heavy steps that sounded like the bottom of boots on wood. I sprung out of bed and into the hallway while calling my mom on the phone. I frantically explained the situation to her, but she calmly asked, "Are the dogs even barking?" I said no. At that time, I had 3 white Labradors, all in the main room, that had a clear sight of the back porch. I let out a sigh of relief and hung up the phone. The instant I ended the call with my mom, my dogs went wild, barking, baring their teeth, and their hair standing tall on their backs. I ran to my room and called my brother, asking him to come home immediately. The dogs barked for a short time afterwards and then stopped. I never found out what was behind the blinds. One night when I was about 12 or 13, my parents were out for a while, and I was staying up past midnight on my computer waiting for them to come home. Although I had been warned not to talk to strangers on the internet a million times, about half of my friends list on MSN were people I had never met before. So I was just chatting with a bunch of them. Out of nowhere, one of my online friends told me exactly what I had been doing in the past hour or two. He mentioned what I was eating, drinking, playing with, and the last time I had gotten up. I hadn't mentioned any of these things in the chat. I instantly got a horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach. My desktop was set up in front of a big window, so as far as I knew, this person I had been talking to, that was supposed to live in a different country than me, had found my address and been watching me through the window. It turns out he had somehow hacked into my webcam. I always left it plugged in. He had been frequently watching me through it whenever he wanted. It's been 15 years, and I still have all the cameras on my devices covered in thick duct tape. I had just moved into my first apartment. It was around 8:30 at night when I heard the front entry doorknob moving. It sounded like someone was putting a key in and turning and knocking. At first, I got excited that my then boyfriend was home, but then realized it was only 8:30. And he would not be home from work until around 10:30. I looked out of the kitchen window and didn't see his car or anyone's car I knew parked outside, and that's when I panicked. The doorknob kept moving for a few more seconds, then stopped for a moment. A few minutes later, someone was trying to pry open the door by sticking a piece of metal in between the door. I freaked out at that point and locked myself in the bathroom with a knife and called 911. After attempting to force the door open for about 3 minutes, they stopped. When the police arrived, they checked the area and found an elderly man roaming around with a knife and a crowbar. He used to live in that apartment, and he wanted to take back his stuff, which we had kept for ourselves when we moved in. I'm so thankful and glad I didn't answer the door once I realized it was no one I knew. To this day, my heart stops when someone knocks on my door. When I was in middle school, I was home alone one night, watching TV in my room, which was right above our kitchen. I had already turned off all the lights downstairs because I was eventually going to fall asleep and didn't want to get yelled at for leaving them on. I was lying in bed, and next to me was our family dog, a Chesapeake Bay Retriever, when suddenly I heard cabinet doors open and shut in the kitchen. It was not like they all opened and shut at once, but more like one after another. I froze and looked at the dog. She perked up and looked back at me. I peeked out my window that looks over our driveway and didn't see anything. I didn't think anyone was in the house because even though the dog was old and lazy, she was a great guard dog and would have responded if the door had opened. After a few seconds, the dog got up and started moving towards the stairs, and I decided to follow, fully confident that if anyone was down there, she would scare them off. I grabbed my softball bat and my cell phone and followed her downstairs. As we were going down, I noticed the lights in the kitchen were turned on, and in a panic, I dialed 911 because I knew I had turned the lights off before going upstairs. When we got into the kitchen, all the cabinet doors were open, but I noticed that the door was still locked, so I figured that whoever did this was still in the house. I quickly ran upstairs into my parents' closet and called them to let them know what was going on. When they came home, they couldn't find anyone. We still don't know why the lights were on and the cabinet doors wide open, but we had some other paranormal-like occurrences happen around that time, so we attributed it to the household ghost. In the fall of 2016, I moved into half of an old house. It was built in the 1880s and was a stone's throw away from the original campus of Indiana University. The owners essentially turned it into a weird duplex. My friend had lived in it right before I moved in. He claimed that it was haunted, but I didn't really believe him because he was a bit of an odd guy. Anyways, the layout of the house was weird. You walked in the door and were in a living room type of space. Then you kept walking and there was a doorway to a bedroom, and past that was the kitchen. No doors within the house. The only door inside was to the bathroom and one that led to the shared basement. My first night there was uneventful. I was a little uncomfortable because I hadn't lived by myself in a long time and was just feeling lonely and on edge. I stayed up late and then eventually fell asleep. But I woke up again around 3 in the morning. Cliché, I know. What woke me up was what sounded like a group of drummers drumming on every flat surface of the living room. It went on for a while, and I was completely terrified. After about 2 or 3 minutes, I finally gathered the courage to get up and check on it, and as soon as I passed the threshold to the living room, it just stopped. Nothing happened the rest of the night, but I didn't get much sleep. A couple of days later, a friend was visiting and he was about to leave. We walked to the front door and briefly stood next to my bookshelf. I told him about how I was having trouble sleeping and my experience from the first night. As I was telling him this, a book threw itself off the bookshelf and onto the floor 3 feet away. It flew past the dresser on which the shelf was perched and landed between the two of us. My friend gave me a creeped out look and said he had to go. I asked the guy in the other half what was up, since he had lived there for 8 years. He told me that no one stayed longer than a year, and they all reported the same creepy stuff. For whatever reason, he said nothing ever happened on his side. A lot of what happened afterwards was a few paranormal things that I often simply dismissed. I would hear things shuffling around in the room I wasn't in, and it wasn't my cats either. The light in the shared basement would randomly come on at night, even when the neighbor in the other half had traveled. Then it got worse. I was woken up sometimes in the middle of the night to a loud crashing sound. In the living room, there was an old electric organ that sat about 6 inches away from the wall. So I had stashed a foldable chair in between the organ and the wall. The crashing sound was the foldable chair being unfolded and slammed into the middle of the room. When I went into the living room, I would find my cats just sitting there and staring at the chair in the middle of the room.